Hi everyone, and welcome to Devtoberfest 2023. I'm Ian Thane, a developer advocate at SAP, and I'll be your host for this session. This is week 3 of the low code, no code sessions. The topic today is more cool integrations for SAP Build Process Automation. Before we begin, I would like to remind you, our attendees, that you can earn points for attending this session by joining our Devtoberfest group on the SAP community page. But by joining, you may become eligible for the Devtoberfest contest, so please check the terms and conditions for more information. A link to the Devtoberfest group is in the description below, and I'll also remind you right at the end. Now I'd like to invite our speakers, Priya and Max from SAP, to introduce themselves and start this session on SAP Build Process Automation.
Thank you, Anne. Hello, I'm Priya, Customer Solution Adoption Senior Specialist from SAP Build Process Automation.
Hello, my name is Max McPhee, and I'm an SAP Build Process Automation Product Specialist based in San Francisco, California.
Okay, welcome you all to the session, and I'll start the session now. Let me know once everyone is able to see my screen. Okay, thanks, Max, for the confirmation. Yeah, so today's topic is all about 3 different cloud integrations that you can do with SAP Build Process Automation. So the first one is Microsoft 365 Office product integration with SAP Build Process Automation. Then we have the Google Workspace integration and also the SuccessFactors automation with SAP Build Process Automation. Now let's get into how do we automate Microsoft Office 365 products. So all of you would have seen with the recent releases in this year, SAP Build Process Automation is now capable to automate all the Microsoft Office 365 products like Outlook, Excel. You can access your files, edit remote files, edit all of them in your SharePoint or OneDrive. And when it comes to the Microsoft Office 365 products, it supports on desktop agent 3.x. And I would take you into detail about this with one interesting use case. So as you know that SAP Developer Advocate team is doing a great job conducting all the sessions for all the SAP products almost since a month, I would say. So how about simplifying their task, like sending an automated calendar events to the Devtober session speakers? I know Anne would have been also facing this tedious task where he has to send out the meeting requests, calendar, like nothing but the calendar invites to all the session speakers. So in this use case, I will take up how do we automate sending the calendar events to all the Devtober session speakers with Microsoft Office products. So the first here is I have all the, let me go back to and share. So I have an Excel, which is in the SharePoint with all the speaker names, the details, the session name, the session timings, and with the YouTube link that would be sent to all the session speakers. I even had maintained a field known as status so that whenever the automation is completed, it would update the field saying that either the request is sent or not. It would even check the availability of the particular speaker, and it would say that the bot would say that the speaker is not available and the calendar invite is not sent. So if you see here, what are all the Microsoft Office 365 products that we are looking here is we have our Excel in the Excel, which is available in the SharePoint, and we are using our email, the Outlook online, where I would be sending the calendar invites to all the session speakers. Now, let me directly get into the demo now. The Outlook online, where I would be sending the calendar invites to all the sessions. Just a moment, I think it's... Now, let me directly get into the demo now. Outlook. Hope all of you are seeing the SAP Build screen now. Yeah. So whenever you want to automate all the SAP, all the Microsoft Office 365 products, you have to authenticate my Azure, your Microsoft 365 products to authenticate your SAP Build Process Automation. So how does the authentication possible? So you need to create, you need to navigate to the settings and then authenticate your SAP Build Process Automation to access all your Office 365 products. So when you create an authentication, you need to select Microsoft 365. Just give a name, give an authentication name like my Microsoft Authentication or any other name, your client ID, client secret, and tenant ID of your Azure portal. So all these credentials you would get from the IT department of your company. So there's nothing but your Azure tenant details and the scope. So what are all the actions that you want to perform, whether you want to send the calendar invites, whether you want to access, whether you want to send the mails on behalf of any other person, all these scope are nothing but what are all the activities that you want to perform using the Office 365. So based on the scope selection, the corresponding operations can be performed for all the Microsoft Office 365 products. So in our case, we are using our Excel and Outlook Online. So I have my scopes available here with the OpenID, user read, and all this offline access. So this is the scope that I have created. And this is my authentication. Once you have successfully created the authentication, now you have to go to your desktop agent and register to this authentication. So how do you navigate here? So go to your desktop agent, and as I said, you can automate your Office 365 products only with the desktop agent 3.x. So make sure you have desktop agent 3.x here. Then you can select the external authentication. So all the authentication mechanisms that you have created in your tenant will be available in your desktop agent as well. So I've created my Microsoft authentication. So the corresponding authentication is available here. Make sure that you select it and register it. So this is the email ID that I have been using. This is nothing but my Office ID. So this is the Office product. So I have my email ID, which is available, which will be used to send the calendar invites, to send an email, to access all the Microsoft 365 products. So now we have completed the setup of authentication here. Authentication where you created at the tenant level and you have successfully registered your desktop agent also with the Microsoft authentication. Now let's see about the building of the use case. So as I said, the use case is we already have Excel available in the SharePoint with all the speaker details, YouTube link, everything. So you would open the Excel, read all the details, check whether that particular speaker calendar is available or not. If he is available at the particular time slot, which is available in the Excel, then we'll send the calendar invite, else we'll not send the calendar invite. After that, we'll update the status accordingly. So let's see the step-by-step activities that we'll be adding now. So since you are using Microsoft 365 activities, make sure that you go to dependencies and add the corresponding SDK, which is nothing but the Microsoft 365 SDK here. So you click on add dependency, add a business process project dependency. And here you would be having Microsoft 365. Since I already added here, I would not be seeing it in the list. But if you have not added it, you would it would appear in that list. So once you add it, all the activities related to Microsoft 365 would be available. So what are the capabilities that SAP Build Process Automation is providing you when you are accessing all the Microsoft 365 products? So when I just search it, so authentication mechanism. So how do you authenticate it? Then you can automate all your Outlook online. You can send emails, you can read the attachments, you can reply them, you can send the calendar invites, edit them, delete, and multiple features are available here. So that is at the main Outlook online Office product. And how do you access your remote files which are there in your OneDrive and SharePoint? So you have all the list of activities where you can access that particular file using the all the activities mentioned here. Then Excel. So your SharePoint Excel, how do you get the values? How do you set them? How do you have the worksheet values? And all of them are available in the Excel online. So 3 products that you can of Microsoft Office 365 that you can do is Outlook online, access your remote files, Excel online, and these are mainly for design purpose where if you want to check anything, but these are not recommended to use in the deployment mode. It's only in the design mode that you'll be using. So now you understood what are all the activities SAP Build Process Automation provides you to automate Microsoft Office 365 products. You have successfully registered your desktop agent and authenticated the Microsoft 365, all of them. Now let's start looking at the step-by-step automation details here. So I've used Select 365 online authentication method. So with this activity, you will authenticate to the Microsoft Cloud 365 products. Okay, so this is the activity which you'll be using. You can see that I have not provided any name here. If you are not providing any name, that means it takes the default authentication of the Microsoft 365 available here. If you look, let me go back to the authentication details. I have 2 of them registered, Microsoft authentication, and then I have SAP integration suite for MS 365. But since I have not provided any particular name, it takes the one which is available as the default. Now, I want to access the remote file, which is a remote Excel file, which is there in my SharePoint. So this is a SharePoint URL. So how do I get the URL of the particular file? Never you open your file, but never take the URL which is available here. Always log into your SharePoint, and I'll just show it to you right away. Log into your SharePoint, select the file, and then use copy link. So this is the URL that you're supposed to provide in your activity of getting the file for the particular files that are available in your SharePoint. I go back to my process now. So this is the SharePoint URL, and what are the output parameters? So this file information will consist of the details of your drive ID and also the file ID. So you can't get it in the design time. What is the file ID of the particular file? You don't even know your drive ID and all this in runtime, right? So this is the activity which helps you with to give you all this information with the help of the SharePoint URL. And next, I use the open workbook. In the step 2, I get what is my drive ID and file ID. And I open the particular Excel. I select the worksheet, session details. As you can see, I have provided my worksheet name as a session details here. So I access a particular worksheet and I use the activity get values. I have the range definition and the format, object headers on first row. Make sure that you select the format of the right type. If you do not select the right type here, right, let's assume that you have not given this format type. So how does it really read the values? It comes as speaker name in the first row, the second row as separate details, third row as separate details, and fourth row as separate details. But that's not the one which I would require whenever I want I have a column name and the corresponding details. So when I use objects header on the first row, the values that are available in speaker info are in such a way that it is like speaker name is Chaitanya Priya, email ID is so-and-so, session name is so-and-so. So it would be easy for you to access in a loop saying that like speaker name dot first row, speaker name dot second row, and third row. So make sure that you have the format of the right type to get your right values in the required way where you can use it in loop later on. I just have a log message so that I can show you what is the type of the format the values are retrieving from the Excel. So till this step, I have retrieved all the values of the details of the speakers, including the YouTube links as well. Now I would loop in and check whether each speaker is available or not. As I said here, now this is a calendar activities that I'm using here. Check users availability. And if you see, I'm using the loop functionality. I'm checking the particular member's email ID. Okay. And start and end time. So you're checking the start and end time of this particular speaker, whether he is available in the slot or not. So make sure that you, when you create the custom data, start time, you have different time zones. Since I'm based out of India, I just selected Indian Standard Time so that it will be easy for me to show it in the demo as well whenever I send a request. So I had selected the time zone as Indian Standard Time, and end time is a session end time, which I have in the Excel, which we have retrieved from the previous steps. So Indian Standard Time, and it would display the user availability. So this output parameter is either true or false, which would indicate particular speaker is available or not during the session time frame that we have mentioned in this Excel. So based on this condition, now if you see here, right, you have a lot of parameters that you can use. Let me show to you a parameter as well. I edit the formula. You got the file information, users availability. You can select whether the user is tentative, whether his user is available on the particular time slot, whether is unavailable. You can select whatever the parameters that you would require. So I selected the parameter as is available on the time slot. Okay, so the particular user is available on a time slot or not. So if he's available on that particular time slot, then I would send the meeting request. And if he's not available, I would update in my Excel saying that the speaker is unavailable, and it would update in this particular column here. Same way, I have updated saying that the speaker is available. So there would be use cases like you want to create a new sheet and update the values or update the Excel value. It all depends on the use case requirement. How do you update the particular values? So now you would have understood how use case and how do you check the particular user's availability, access the remote files, and send out a meeting request as well. Now let me test the automation. So as you can see here, the session time is in a format on October 6th, and the time is at 6 p.m. IST. Okay, and the session is till 7:30 p.m., 6:30 p.m. IST, and the YouTube link and everything. And when you see the send meeting request, I even added all the body here. Okay, I have the subject here. I added who all the users, everything you get it from your Excel sheet. And I even had updated the body also here. How should it look like? What are the email session link that you get from your Excel? So start time, date, end time. And here, if you see, if it is a Teams meeting, you can have it as it is online meeting true. Then you would have an automatic Microsoft Teams meetings added here. Since it's a YouTube live session, I made this parameter as false. And I just edited the location saying it as YouTube live session. Else you can say it as Teams session and make this parameter as true. If you want to include Microsoft Teams meeting request. Okay, so let me show my calendar to you as well. It's on October 6th. And my calendar is available at the time slot 6 to 6:30 p.m. IST here. So ideally, I should be, the speaker is available, and I should be receiving a meeting request as well. Now let's test the automation. So I have my SharePoint URL. So as I said, you have to copy the URL from here. I made it as an environment variable so that any other user has it in his OneDrive or SharePoint can access this. I'll later talk about the authentication parameter after executing this automation. In this use case, it's like default authentication, which is getting used, which is nothing but my user ID, my email would be used to send the meeting request. And if you see my Excel also, which is in the SharePoint, the status is blank, and the bot should be updating all the status as well. It's configuring the agent. So we have three speakers here with all the details available. So the bot is executing now. So it gets all the remote file information. It opens the Excel, and now if you see in your test console, you can see that the speaker info here, which I said the get values, you have got with the speaker name, the particular details of the particular, in the first row, you have the speaker and the corresponding details, email and session. So this is how the output of the get values is. And you can see here, check users availability. So email address is Chaitanya Priya, and you can see users availability. It's showing as is fully available and the time slot is true. Since it is available, the activity send meeting request is executed. And let's take the second speaker. Let's see Max calendar. Looks like Max calendar is not available. That's the reason why it did not go to send meeting request. And you can see the output parameter saying that is available, fully available, and the time slot is false. Hence, the meeting request is not sent to the Max. And I have other speaker where it executed and the other speaker is available, and you can see the meeting ID as well. Let's go back to the SharePoint Excel and see here, it's mentioned that I'm available and the meeting request is sent, Max is not available and the meeting request is not sent, and so. Now let me open my calendar and show how it looks like. So you can see it's 6 to 6:30. I have the session and YouTube link, which I have already added it, and with the signature here. Now let me show you the other speakers as well in the sent items. So you would see the same thing available in the sent items as well. And the required field, you would see all the details in the required field. Just give me a moment. I'm opening the sent items, which has been triggered by the bot now. As you can see, the meeting request is sent at 9:51, which just is triggered from the bot now. And I've sent to the other speaker, Baptist, the required field and the format. So you can change the body of the field, make it beautified accordingly. So this is just a sample that I've showed it to you. Okay, now let's consider the use case where we have multiple departments in the Oktoberfest, right? So Ayan is taking care of maybe SAP Build as a whole, or Daniel is taking SAP Build as a whole. Then we have another developer advocate like Rekha, someone who is taking care of SAP Integration Suite sessions. But everyone wants to use this automation developed. And how do they use the same automation where they should not change their email IDs? Okay, and they want to use it in one system only. They don't want to have multiple desktop agents. They don't want to have multiple VMs also to just execute this automation. So how do we achieve it when we have multiple departments and the same automation with one desktop agent, one where everything has to be executed in one VM? Now let's see how do we achieve it. I'll go back to my settings here. I create another authentication. Okay, so Yeah, and if you see here now, now I create another authentication, and I'll mention all the details. But in the system here, I will mention another email ID when I'm registering it. So I'll open this. Instead of my email ID, which you already have, we'll have the other person's, other organizing team members' email ID mentioned here. Okay. So now you will understand the importance of select authentication method. So if you can see here, if I want to, if I am one of the organizing team member, then of SAP Build for Developer Advocate, then I would say my authentication name should be my Microsoft Authentication. Suppose SAP Integration Suite organizing team wants to use this bot to send out the meeting request with their email IDs, then they have to use this one because it is registered with their email ID. How do I use this name in the automation? So you go to select 365 authentication, and I talked about the environment variable, right, which I created. So authentication name, make sure that you create it here. Earlier, it was by default selecting what is there. Now it would override the default when I test it. Now, if you see here, I'll save it. Whatever is the authentication name, suppose now other SAP integrations with Developer Advocate wants to send it. So the authentication name that he has used is SAP Integration Suite Organization Team. So he will use the name as SAP Integration Suite Organization Team as authentication name, org team, and then execute it. So that's how every department in Developer Advocate team can send out the meeting request with their particular user ID. I think now you would have got an end-to-end overview about how do we automate all the Microsoft Office 365 products like email, Excel, access your remote file. And I think this automation also would help the Developer or Advocate team, maybe in future, whenever they conduct the Devtoberfest sessions. Now I will hand it over to Max, who will talk about Google a cloud integration with SAP Build Process Automation with a business use case.
Great, thanks, Priya.
Over to you, Max.
Okay. Before we go into SAP Build, we can go into the slides. So today I wanted to be able to cover our integration with Google Workspace and Document AI. These integrations are really helpful for customers that maybe don't have the M365 suite and want to be able to automate processes within their own Google Workspace, being able to interact with things like Gmail, Google Sheets, Google Docs, as well as Google Calendar. With this Google Workspace and Document AI integration, we're able to help support building end-to-end processes, which combine inputs from a variety of these different sources. So later, we'll be able to see an example of how you can take in inputs that are coming in through Gmail and then be able to save them securely within Google Drive. In addition to being able to create these end-to-end processes, we also have the ability to really quickly put processes together with the predefined activities. So we'll actually go through, in addition to the use case, we'll be able to take a look at some of the different activities that this package provides to be able to kind of see how we can interact with Gmail, Google Sheets, and the other Google Workspace activities. In addition to being able to build out custom processes, we can also leverage some of the pre-built content that's available from the SAP Build store. There's currently around 350 packages that are available. These range from entirely built out processes to processes that can be used as kind of a process accelerator, being able to help you quickly build your automation, but not an entirely end-to-end process. Those are going to be designed primarily around S4 and ECC, but also include pre-built content for the other LOB applications like SuccessFactors and Ariba. When you're looking to be able to use the Google Workspace integration, one of the great things is that if you're already using SAP BTP on GCP, you can actually deploy SAP Build Process Automation onto GCP in order to be able to use these services from a Google data center. As of now, the availability is going to be US 30 or the Iowa or Central US data center for GCP. Being able to interact with the Google Workspace activities is going to require similar authentication that we saw for the M365. In order to do that, we are able to support these activities using the Desktop Agent 3 and the Desktop Agent 2. Before we dive into the actual kind of process, I do just want to point out that we'll be sharing some helpful links here. The first one is going to be a how-to guide or kind of a developer tutorial from the developer.sap.com site, which explains how to go ahead and get started with the authorization and then the Workspace SDKs within SAP Build Process Automation. So these will help you to do the authentication steps and then get started with actually building out your first process using the SDK. And in addition to that, we also have a link to our SAP Build store, which includes a pre-built package, like I was mentioning, kind of one of those accelerators that can be used to help explain how do you actually use the Google Workspace SDK, and can provide some examples of how you could build out different processes using these different SDKs. But with that, let's dive in and actually take a look at how we can use this within a process. So today we're going to be taking a look at an example. It's going to be a purchase order process where we need to be able to automatically receive emails which are going to have a Google Sheet attached. We are going to want to be able to read those Google Sheets and save them from the email rather than being an attachment. Well, we want to save them into Google Drive. And as we're saving them into Google Drive, we're going to be setting them up as their own unique sheet so that we can be using that as kind of a method to be able to track this process. And once we've saved it as its own sheet, we're going to go ahead and actually post that into S4 using an API call. And then once it's been posted, we're going to receive back a reference ID letting us know that that's been posted. And we're going to attach that back to the original file so that we know that it's been processed. So if we go ahead and take a look, we're going to see that we're going to be authorizing this process. In this example, we're actually going to be going ahead and just using a service account, but just wanted to be able to highlight real quickly that with the Google Workspace SDK, we are able to authenticate either using an OAuth or with a service account. So we are able to support both methods of authentication, whether depending on which approach you'd like to take. But going back into the main process here, we'll see that we're going to use the service account method. And then once we've actually gone ahead and gotten the service account, we're then going to start off with our process where we're going to first get the name of our folder within Google Drive. This is going to be able to grab the actual Drive ID that we need, but we're able to search for it using plain text just based off of the name of the folder. So in this case, we're searching for the folder of purchase order, and that's going to return this folder details activity or a variable that we'll be using later in the process. Now we're then going to go ahead and search for the emails. One of the really nice things about this SDK is that the search functionality when we're looking through emails is going to be exactly the same as the search bar up here when you're searching through emails. So you can go ahead and pass a couple of different parameters here. In this case, we're actually going to be searching for the email based off of the subject matching purchase orders. We're going to ensure that these are only going to be emails that have attachments and that they're unread in the inbox. So with these kind of 4 filters here, we're able to target all of the emails that we want to be able to read and get the attachments from. And with that activity, we're going to get a return of those actual message identifiers. So it's going to provide us with a list of all of the messages or emails that match that criteria. Now that we have a list of all the emails that we need to be able to get the attachments from, we're able to go ahead and actually pass that list into a for each loop, where we'll be able to then loop on all of those emails. And as we're going through them, we'll then be able to start reading them and extracting the attachments. So we'll see that in this activity with the read email, we're going to be inputting the actual message ID. So that's going to be leveraging the iterative kind of current member within this for each loop, telling it that we want to save it within Google Drive, and then passing it that folder drive ID that we saw from the activity above, where we searched for it based off of the name. Once we've actually read that email, we'll then get it passed back a message detail that, again, we'll use later within the process. We're then going to go ahead and create a file within Google Drive to be able to save this, which we're going to then be able to use some of the additional search criteria here to make sure that we create the right file. And then once we've actually gone through, we're then going to go and we want to be able to handle the different attachments that might be on those emails. In some cases, there may be more than one Google Sheet attached. And so we may need to be able to iterate through those. And so again, we're going to now leverage a loop here, and we're going to start now importing and creating a Google Sheet based off of the information that we've received from the attachment. So within this step here, we'll see that we're going and choosing to save a new Google Sheet within Drive, and the Google Sheet that we're going to use as kind of the source is going to be the Drive or the Google Sheet file that we had pulled out from the email. So being able to pull that from this loop up above. Once we've done that, we'll go ahead and actually delete the temporary folder, and then we can start extracting the values from that newly created sheet that we'll then be able to use to actually go ahead and create the order. So within this activity, we're going to be setting just the values of which sheet we want to grab from, as well as then the range where the fields are that we need to be able to extract. And that's going to then be set up that we can then use to actually go ahead and post this. We will just kind of log that just to be able to see within the history what the values were that were extracted before they actually went ahead and went posted. We then use this sub automation, which just takes in as an input the input values. So in this case, the cells from that sheet, and then it's going to pass us back the output of just that sales order ID once it's actually been created. So being able to pass us back a reference ID that we can use to validate that that the order was actually created. Once that creation is complete, we'll then go ahead and actually rename the spreadsheet. So earlier, when I was mentioning how we're able to leverage some of the steps here in order to kind of help keep track of the process, in this case, we're actually going ahead and we're going to rename it, and we'll see that we're going to change the name to just append the word processed so that we know that it's actually been processed. So just a nice way to be able to keep track, and can also help to ensure that you don't end up double processing any of the records. And then finally, we'll go ahead and send a reply back to confirm with that reference ID that the order was created. So sending that back to the person who originally submitted the email with the order details. And then finally, we'll just disconnect from the service so that we're not keeping that authentication open. And so with this, you'll see how we can actually go ahead and kind of interact with S4 and connect it into Google Workspace in this case, in order to be able to automate a process that otherwise was probably being handled in a more manual fashion of somebody maybe manually grabbing the information out and submitting those into S4. So really being able to take the opportunity here to leverage the Google Workspace SDK and improve this process through automation. So I am just going to pause here and take a look at the chat if there are any questions. Okay, looks like no questions right now. Please feel free, if you do have any questions while you're watching, to put those in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them once I take a pause again or at the end of the session. So now that we've seen that process, I do just also want to highlight just another example of kind of how you can go through and actually search for the emails. So just a quick example of how you can go ahead and search for emails, because I know that one of the kind of most common use cases of this SDK may be interacting with Gmail. And so I wanted to be able to highlight how you could do that. So as I mentioned, when we're using the search email activity, we are able to pass kind of the parameters that you would send through when you're searching within your email inbox. And so with that, we can really just include whatever query you need within the kind of input. And then that's going to return you a list of all of the messages that meet that criteria. And so this is going to be just a list of all of the IDs for those messages. And then what we're able to do is pass that into a for each loop. So what we'll do here is we're going to just set the loop to loop over this list of the message IDs. And that will be able to kind of be a dynamic loop here, where based on however many IDs there are is how many times it's going to loop. And every time that it's in there, we're going to actually have it, in this case, saving it locally to our temp folder. We can choose that we're going to have it be saved to the file system rather than Drive. And we're going to have it choose that we want to grab that message ID from the actual index of that loop to make sure that we're grabbing the right email and saving it. And then if we wanted to go ahead and actually send any emails, we'll see that being able to set this up is, again, going to be very similar to the interface that you have within Gmail. So we can choose to kind of create custom data for who we want to be able to send our email to. And here we can enter really any of the fields that you would see within a traditional email. So you can set up the addresses that it's going to be sent to, the subject, the body, as well as in being able to choose if you'd like to add any attachments. So this can be really helpful for being able to send a confirmation once a process has completed, as well as for being able to send out new emails in bulk, like what we saw with Priya's session, where we were looking into how we could send out mass calendar invites. And so now that we've gone through Google Workspace activities, I now want to transition to our final integration, which is going to be taking a look at how we can work with SAP SuccessFactors. So with SAP SuccessFactors, this is going to be a little bit of a different SDK than what we've seen so far today. The two other SDKs for M365 and for Google Workspace are primarily based around APIs and are going to be interacting in kind of a headless fashion where we're not actually going to be seeing any of the interaction. Obviously, you can go ahead and open some of the cloud applications and see the changes as they're happening, but you're not going to be seeing things interacting through the actual operating system or kind of through your own end users kind of desktop. Instead, those are all just happening through API calls. But today, we're going to now take a look at SuccessFactors integration. And in this case, we're going to see a little bit more of a UI automation integration. So with this SuccessFactors integration, we have similar to the other activity or similar to the other SDKs, we do have a lot of unique activities in order for interacting with SuccessFactors. But in this case, it's going to be for interacting with the actual UI. So we do have the ability to connect with SuccessFactors via APIs, but there are going to be situations where you're not able to have an API for the activity that you need to do. And so we might want to be able to build a custom automation to be able to address that use case. One of the nice things with SAP Build Process Automation is that you can then set up a project to be triggered with an API. So you can kind of build your own API in the cases where there maybe isn't one available from SuccessFactors. When we're looking at this SuccessFactors SDK, we're going to see that we have a benefit on both the side of capturing pages when we're doing the UI kind of screen capture of SuccessFactors, as well as seeing a benefit when we're creating the activities and kind of building out our processes around it. Because with this SuccessFactors integration, we're going to see that we have a much stronger capture of the different pages that we're looking to interact with. That's due to some special IDs that we're able to capture, which improve kind of the recognition of the different pages and elements within those screens, as well as then being able to have these custom activities that are uniquely set up to be able to interact with the unique elements that we have within SuccessFactors. So in order to kind of show that off, I do want to be able to show you an example of how you could go ahead and build a login workflow for SAP SuccessFactors, and then looking at how we could expand that out to cover some additional steps. And so with that, let's go ahead and switch back into the SAP Build. So before we go into that project, I do just want to show how you'd be able to interact with SuccessFactors in cases where there is maybe an API, and kind of a cool example if you haven't seen the actions before. If we wanted to be able to make an interaction that was using an API, what we can do is actually just go ahead and choose create, choose build an automated process, and then choose actions. This is going to now allow us to choose an API source. In this case, we'll just choose directly the Business Accelerator Hub. Right here, you'll be able to see that we have options from all of the different SAP applications that have APIs available on the Business Accelerator Hub, including SuccessFactors. So we can see that, let's say we wanted to be able to go ahead and build a process around recruiting. We can go ahead and access these recruiting APIs. For example, we could do something around offer letter creation using this offer creation API. So this is a great option when there are APIs available. However, there are going to be instances where maybe an API isn't available that's able to do the activity that you're looking to automate. And in those cases, that's where we're able to leverage the SuccessFactors SDK in order to build a custom automation in order to address that use case. So in this case, just to get started with any process, you're going to have to log in. So just a really quick example here of how we are able to kind of start the web page. We're going to then set the username and password and then go ahead and press enter. So really a very lightweight process, but really what I wanted to be able to focus on is actually the capture side and kind of the benefit that the SuccessFactors SDK provides as we're going through and actually capturing these pages. So first thing that you may notice is that when I'm actually choosing to capture this application, in addition to just seeing that it's SuccessFactors and seeing that it has that correct domain, it's also identifying it specifically as a SuccessFactors framework. This framework is what helps us in being able to identify the following pages and helps us to have that improved recognition that makes it so that you're less likely to have automations break and need to have their capture updated because it is a much more robust capture and recognition that we're using. So looking at kind of the example here, when I'm going through and kind of capturing the username and password fields, I was able to just simply use the class based on the username and the class being password. And most of the recognition is actually coming from the fact that it's seeing it as a SuccessFactors element. And I'm able to then also validate that it's being uniquely identified because it's passing the recognition tests. And so I know that I have a nice strong capture, but let's say that we need to go ahead and capture an additional page. Just going to log in on my other screen. So let's say that you wanted to kind of continue on with building this automation. Let's see an example of how you can actually capture and identify some of the different elements that you have within a SuccessFactors page. So we've captured the login page and built the login workflow. So the next thing that we'll want to do is kind of building out the automation from the next page that we reach. So in this case, we're going to be coming directly to the admin center. So I'm going to capture that next. In order to capture that page, what I'm going to be able to do is just go through here. I'm going to choose to add a screen. We'll see that my application capture window comes up. Within here, we can choose that we're going to actually select that admin center, and we can choose that we're going to capture it with the web technology. I'm going to go ahead and hit capture. And so now that's actually going ahead and capturing the different elements on the screen. And now it's done that, we can go ahead and choose to save it. And the only change I'm going to make is just for having a little bit of a simpler name. I'm going to just modify that to just say admin center, and we can choose to go to application. And so in this case, we'll see that it's already been able to successfully identify the screen, and it's uniquely identifying it based off of the title of that page. These are all criteria that I think are going to be good. So I'll just leave that as it is, just kind of keeping the default. And now we can go ahead and take a look at kind of how we might want to be able to interact with this page. So in this case, let's say that we maybe want to be able to go ahead and interact with some of the reports here. One of the options that we have is that we can go ahead and actually kind of capture this selected table, and then we can go ahead and choose one of the reports from here. This would allow us to automatically generate one of these reports, and we could then set this automation up on a scheduled trigger to run every day or every hour, really whatever frequency we need, and be able to automatically generate this report and send it out in an email using either the M365 or the Google Workspace activities that we'd seen earlier. So let's say that we want to be able to go ahead and capture this to do the extraction. What we're able to do is we can actually just make this selection here. And right now we're getting kind of some more random criteria. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to go and use the actual class that it has. And I'm not going to choose to use this no selection, because once that actually gets selected, that's going to then cause a problem where it's going to no longer recognize the field. But we can use this and say that this will be the combo box that we need to save. And we'll choose to just change this to be a SuccessFactors element. And with that, we can choose to declare the field. But now we need to be able to identify one of the values from within this search field. And I could find it. It's going to be available within here, and I could go through and search through the tree, but I want to be able to use this as an opportunity to show you a little bit of a shortcut for being able to capture objects like this, where they are available through the kind of tree HTML structure, but maybe aren't showing up within the actual kind of graphical side. So what we can do is we can actually go ahead and kind of capture another version of the screen. And so in order to do that, I'm going to first go and just choose to open up this window so that it's ready to go. And then I'm going to choose this option here of add capture to current screen. What this is going to allow me to do is allow me to capture that other page and add it just as another example to this existing captured page. So it doesn't have a change to the actual recognition. It just allows me to be able to show additional elements to it that maybe weren't there when I first captured the screen. So this is a great example of where I'm trying to capture elements that are available within a kind of drop-down navigation menu. But additionally, you can use this method to capture things like search results, right? If I have a application where I'm searching and I'm on the same page when I then get my results, I'm going to want to be able to capture that same screen again to be able to identify the different results so that I can then interact with those. And so in this case, I can kind of choose to rename this. And just so I remember it, I'm just going to call it the drop-down menu so that I know that it has the capture that has the drop-down menu. And now if I want to go ahead and actually capture one of these values, we can see that it's going to be able to provide me with a little bit of an easier way of being able to see the actual element that I'm capturing. And so I can now go through, and still I'm going to leverage the tree just to be able to go through some of the kind of higher fields and the higher tags to get to the actual elements that I'm trying to target. But now, because I've gone ahead and actually captured with this method, we can see that as I'm clicking onto the different areas within the tree, it's able to show me exactly what I'm actually representing. So let's say that I wanted to be able to set this up to automatically extract the development goal information. We can go ahead and select this element. Automatically is detecting it as a SuccessFactors element. And we can see that it's using the title as the ID. So that's a nice solid capture. So we'll go ahead and choose to declare that element. And now we're all set. So we can go ahead now and return to the automation development side and actually build out the automation that will go ahead and make those interactions. So we'll just choose to go ahead and create a new login or a new automation here. I'll just extract goal data. And because we're doing automation to simplify things and reduce repeating work, we're going to go ahead and reuse our login workflow. So I'm just going to go ahead and attach that to the top of my process here. And then we can go ahead and start building from the second screen, which is where we'll be after the login workflow runs. So I'm going to go ahead and just attach this admin center screen. Once I've added that, I'm going to double click on it so that I can pull up this preview window where I can then see the different fields that I'm clicking on. And I can then actually choose element or choose activities based on what I'm clicking on. And it's a really helpful way to be able to actually build this out. And so right now, the first thing that I'm going to want this to do is actually click on the drop-down box to open it up. And so I'm going to go ahead and select this. And what that's going to do is it's going to apply the contextual filtering. So we can see that that contextual filtering is turned on here. And what that means is that it's going to now limit what shows up based off of what I've actually selected. So in this case, we'll see that it's only going to be activities related to elements. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and look at the SuccessFactors SDK, and I'm going to choose this click element button. By using that click element that's specific to SuccessFactors, I know that it's going to be a nice click that's going to be able to send any of the triggers that the element may need to recognize that click. And then I can go ahead and actually just repeat that process. So if I want to be able to go ahead and now click on the actual report that I want to select, then all I need to do is change the capture that I have selected. I'm now looking at that drop-down menu. And just as before, I'll click on the element within the screenshot. And now, just to show a little bit of another example of how we can build this out, I actually go ahead and just choose to drag this and choose to target the element that I wanted to click on. And so with that, I now have the option to go ahead and extract that field. And so as you've seen, we can go ahead and interact with the different screens within SuccessFactors in order to be able to automate the extraction of reports like this development goal report without having to leverage an API. It can be especially useful in cases where there isn't an API available, but you still need to be able to automate that extraction. With this, we're able to build it around SuccessFactors and do so in a quick way, while also being able to leverage some of the increased capture, which will provide us a benefit kind of in the long run by being able to reduce the amount of rework that may be necessary if any sort of screen changes occur. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pause one more second just to check the chat to see if we have any questions. Okay, and I see Priya has answered one of them already. And so I see just one last question. Hello, what kind of user does process automation involving UI and SuccessFactors ideally use for the process? And I'm sorry, if the user pest control, if you could put in the chat, are you referring to which type of user type from SuccessFactors? Or are you trying to looking into like the persona of the user that might be creating this? I think it may be leaning towards the side of what the persona is. If you're looking for somebody that's going to be able to develop this, I would suggest using somebody that has a little bit of a development background, because as you've seen today, it does require using some HTML knowledge in order to interact with the tree, in order to actually go ahead and capture some of these elements. My experience, I used Code Academy and learned basic HTML, and that was sufficient for me to be able to handle this. But I do think that it can be helpful to have that type of experience. And then being able to also work closely with somebody who has the SuccessFactors knowledge in order to make sure that if there are any kind of potential other ways to do something, those are identified. Because when you're building UI automation like this, it's always beneficial to know the different ways that you might be able to approach a process, because while you may do a process a certain way when you're doing it manually, there can be benefits to doing it in a different approach when you're actually going ahead and automating it. For example, when you're building out process automation using key shortcuts can be really helpful, because it can reduce the amount of elements that you need to capture. And so it can be useful to use a user that has a little bit of a mixture of development background as well as experience with SuccessFactors. I think that was all of the questions. So we can go back to the slides and wrap up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Over to Ian.
Wow. Thank you, Priya and Max. Thank you for a great session. I learned a lot. Thank you, Max, for Google and SuccessFactors in automation and integration. And Priya, thank you so much for M365. Yeah, I'm sure the developer advocates will be using that in the future. Thank you so much. For the attendees, I've got an important note. Remember, in order to earn points for the competition, you probably want to complete the tutorial based on this session. A link is in the description and in the chat. Thank you all for joining this session. I wish you all a great day, evening, or wherever you are in the world. And thank you, and continue to watch DevToberfest. Thank you so much. Thank you, Max and Priya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. We have ended.